change the rules, Mr. Speaker, we will challenge that decision.
Yes. 2-1. Mr. Speaker, I was deprived of my legislative privileges of citing the gazetted copy of the National Water Resource Bill, and as such, could not participate in the consideration of the report of the Committee of Whole, which also deprived me of my rights and privileges of representation to the people who sent me to this chamber. Number 2, Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, it is in the effort to eliminate the element of surprise that this House, in its wisdom, included in its standing rules, that every bill must be gazetted or clean copies circulated. It is important to note the emphasis word here is gazette or clean copies circulated, which means appearing in the bills journals of the House. The words used are clear, they are unambiguous, they ought to be given their ordinary meaning as stated in our standing rules. It is important to emphasize that I have painstakingly searched the whole of these chambers and our various document-keeping centers, all through the journals, and I cannot find where this bill has been gazetted. I stand to be challenged or to be corrected. The next question for consideration, Right Honorable Speaker, is the interpretation of the rules of this House. And the onus is on you to interpret it, as stated in our order, in our standing rules, Order 7, Rule 1, that the Speaker shall interpret the rules of this House. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, this same water bill was stated as National Water Resource Bill 2020, but it was not treated as such. A bill that emanated in 2020 should have gone through first reading, second reading, and third reading before passage. It was not treated as such, and this is a denial of my representation to my people. Honorable Speaker, I was also misled by Rule 12, Order 12, Rule 18. It says that a bill that had not been passed, Mr. Speaker, Rule 18 deals with assembly to assembly. From my legislative knowledge, Right Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, that bill has no life. That bill died in the upper chamber, and as such, was supposed to commence the journey de novo. Right Honorable Speaker, I therefore rely on Order 8, Rule 8, that bill be rescinded and expunged from our records, or be made to go through the necessary considerations that a bill will have to go through before it passes. Particularly considering the mood of the nation, we are here to serve the Nigerian people and not to serve ourselves. If the Nigerian people so do not desire a bill, we put it at rest or put it to public debate and public scrutiny for them to have their input. Mr. Speaker, my rights have been infringed on, and as I stand, I cannot go to my constituency because I need to show them copies of this bill, and I've gone through all our journals, it is not there. I therefore move, Mr. Speaker, that this bill be rescinded, expunged, until it begins the journey de novo. I so move. Thank you for listening.
The executive bill and this bill, historically, you are the first person to move debate on this bill when you are the majority leader, historically. All the histories are there in the journals. These bills followed the normal procedure of the House as enshrined, excuse me, please. As enshrined in the order of this book, in order of this. And this bill, Mr. Speaker, my brother Abonta, he was sitting for nearly 1 hour when this bill was passed, was considered on this floor. You were here on the 23rd. He was here. So, Mr. Speaker, when a member is saying that this House has no right to entertain that because there is constitutional provision, that is not true. We must not misinform members about the provision of this bill. That bill is a consolidation of 4 acts. One act is 1986, that's the Water Resources Act. The other one is River Basin Development Authorities of 1985. The other one is Nigerian Hydrological Agency Act of 2010, and there is Nigerian Institute of Water Resources, Mando Kaduna, of 1986. These bills were consolidated. Can you imagine one of the provisions in the bill is still talking about Bendel State? It's still talking about Bendel State. Then if you look at the catchment zone areas of
Honorable Sada, just like I didn't want him to debate the bill.
It is, let me read it. The extensive business of the House, which is all completed and laid in the House by a committee of the House, remains undetermined at the end of the Assembly, shall be resumed and proceeded in the next Assembly in the same manner as if the tenure of the Assembly had not come to an end. If the House resolved in the affirmative that such bills, upon being regazetted, be considered in the committee of the whole without being commenced de novo.
I'm a little bit taken aback on the arguments being given on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, if you recall, before the final consideration of this bill, there was a day this bill was slated for consideration. Some members approached you, including the leader of the opposition. And you had to now ask the chairman rules and business to provide you the relevant evidences that this bill was considered in the last House. That day, we had to step down the bill. That day, copies were circulated. And I don't know, Mr. Speaker, that we want to now change the rules midway. I know, and I do know, that there are a lot of bills, more than 20, 30, in similar direction that this House have considered. If it's contentious, is that the way to answer? Is that the way to now come back and then blackmail the House? I was the chairman of House Committee of the Whole. I know, and it's an indictment with me. There was no way we could have considered the bill without copies. Of course, how many of you were on the floor? How many of you were on the floor? I have always complained for the fact that you refuse to avail yourself. Can we show the clip? Can we get the clip? You will now know exactly who are there. If you refuse to come to the House to defend the position of your people, after this thing are taken, they come and say we should do. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, it's against our rules. That should not be tolerated. Thank you very much, sir.
God, permit me to invoke our rules.
Kuye, go back to your seat.
Section 717. I invite the spirit of this session to ask you.
He's walking.
Hello. I remain Uzaman Mabonta again. I invoke.
Honorable colleagues, please.
Permit me to invoke section rules, order 7, rule 7.1 of our rules. Invoking the intendment and spirit of it, I call upon you that the spirit of this session beseech you to do the needful by interpreting the rules, which is all of you. 2, before I take my seat, this is the paper that were used to do that motion. It was labeled section 18.
Now he recalculated that he relied on 16. So it was a bunch of deceit if we came by 18 and see. Therefore, subject this to your ruling and give us your ruling as compelled here. Thank you.
Wait. Read Rule 16, we've read Rule 18. I think the two of them have one thing in common, and that is the issue of regazetting. Although Rule 16 now gives an alternative. It says, all copies circulated. So what we need to find out now is whether or not it was regazetted or clean copies were circulated.
Yes.
You agree?
Yes, sir.
We need to find out.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why. Honorable colleagues, please.
Please.
You know, it's important when we do our business, and I'm glad that you've agreed that that is the only issue, the narrow issue here.
Yes.
The issue of constitutional and all of those things, for me, though very important, are not things we should be considering at this point in time. And in all things, you know, we prayed this morning as we pray every day. We say, help us with thy grace to do only those things that will promote the unity, peace, happiness, and prosperity of Nigeria. And that is what we should do here. So, but I will allow Honorable Abonta to say what he wants to say, and then I'll give my ruling on this issue so that we don't tell. Honorable Abonta.
Under Constitutional Order 315 sub 5. Mr. Speaker, I'm relying also on Constitutional Order on Land Use Act. Mr. Speaker, I want you to look at Section 9 sub 2 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I will take you to 64 of the exclusive list. Mr. Speaker, I want to question the jurisdiction for us to entertain the water bill. We have no local state jurisdiction, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to adopt the postulations and argument of Honorable Zandu as if they are mine. Considering that we are procedural error, leave it aside. Constitutionally, we have no right to discuss that. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution laid foundation for alteration of Constitution in Section 9.2. Let me ask a simple question. Can we, by virtue of a bill, amend the Constitution? The answer is no. Mr. Speaker, Land Use Act is here. It says, okay, Constitution 315 says, if you go to 315, Mr. Speaker, 315, particularly 5. If I may read, nothing in this Constitution shall invalidate the following enactments. That is to say, the National Youth Service Corps Decree, the Public Complaints Commission Act, the National Security Agencies Act, and the Land Use Act. It went further to say how you can alter it. If this is so, the water bill in its entirety is an affront of the Land Use Act. The water bill seems to talk about water in the ground, water on the surface, water in the reservoir, water in the pot of soup,
Yeah, Honorable
everywhere.
Honorable Abonta.
Mr. Speaker,
Your constitutional order is noted, but I think at this stage,
of wrong procedure. And Mr. Speaker, a lot of us align with that position. Simply, we ought to regazette this bill. And the simple truth is, if we fail to adhere to the procedure, even where it is assented to by Mr. President, a court can set it aside. So what is wrong in adopting the proper procedure? He's not asking that the bill should be killed. Let us regazette it. There are members who were not in the previous assembly who hadn't the opportunity of seeing that bill gazetted. Give them the opportunity. Aside that, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, if you look at Order 12, Rule 3. It also says that we have 3 different days to schedule bills, whether it is a bill that was recalled from previous assembly or a fresh bill, unless we set aside the rule. This particular bill was listed for committee of the whole the same day the motion for reconsideration was listed. Same day, same order paper. It is also offensive against Order 12, Rule 3. So the simple thing we should do to correct it, it might be a very beautiful bill. Other countries have similar bills. Very beautiful as it may be, we commend those who crafted it, but at this stage, let us do the proper thing. Let us send it back, re-gazette it, bring it back for full consideration and argument, so that even Nigerians will also be carried along, and they will be convinced by the time we pass this bill. It will be counterproductive if we're in a hurry to pass this bill. So I will urge and pray that we consider the issue raised by our colleague and take a decision in the interest of the entire country that we represent here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On that,
Legend may not meant to be debated, but because of the sensitivity of the matter, we open it up for debate. Matters of privilege are not meant to be debated, but because of the sensitivity of the matter, we open it up for debate. Honorable colleagues, I have just read out the prayers that we pray every day. And I want you to recall that I had a bill on the floor of this House, the infectious disease bill, which at the end of the day generated a lot of controversy. We were informed that we passed it with the speed of light, which was neither here nor there, and that the procedure was wrong, and that it was not sent for public hearing. And being sensitive to the people, I stepped my bill down and I sent it to public hearing. Fundamental issues have been raised by Honorable Mzondo about his privilege and that of many others being breached. He has backed it up by clear language and provisions of our rules, which says any such bill must be regazetted. The Chairman Business and Rules sought to rely on Rule 16, which gives a window of either regazette or clean copies. Unfortunately, it appears some people have done their homework. I was presented with the motion itself for the day, which did not talk about Rule 16, but talked about Rule 18, which does not give the alternative of clean copies, which strictly says it must be regazetted. We don't want to do things here that the courts will annul based on even procedure. So there may still be good in this bill, but I think it's good to err on the side of caution. And I think the bill should be sent back for regazetting and brought back to the floor so that we'll consider it and nobody will have any issue at that point. The right thing would have been done. So the ruling will be that, please, very quickly, Chairman Business and Rule, please send the bill for regazetting and bring it back to the floor.